on YouTube and Facebook. Today is September 5th. Happy Labor Day weekend, everyone here in America and whoever celebrates that elsewhere. Hello, Dr. Adia. How are you doing today?
I'm doing fine, John. It's wonderful to be with you again.
Yes, and Tatiana, how are you doing?
Thank you for asking. We are, as usual, early birds team working, ready to see the friends, and I'm happy to see some familiar friends already joining us.
Cool.
Thank you for your service, John and Jeremiah. It has been pleasure and honor to be with you often.
And, I was telling Tatiana that the two of the Jesus Christ disciples were named John and Jeremiah. I think the two of you are really, they may be reincarnation of those disciples. So you're doing a wonderful job.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. So Jeremiah here, he's the wailing prophet, and I'm, I guess, the grace of God, right?
I'll tell you a story. This gentleman who was from India, and he was a Buddhist. He went to a restaurant and he had his dinner. When he finished, he told the waiter, do you believe in reincarnation? The waiter said, yes. He said, do you mind if I pay you in my next life when I come back? The waiter
in my
said,
next life, he says.
The waiter said, yes, of course I mind, because that's exactly what you told me in your last life. It's reincarnation. Sometimes it doesn't work.
Well, I can understand that. I can understand that. You got to have payment in this life. Payment this life only. I'm kidding. So that is interesting. That's very interesting. So speaking of lives, we're speaking today about Khalil Gibran. I'm interested to find out more about this interesting subject, the concept of the Khalil Gibran's connection to Abdu'l-Baha. I'm interested to figure that out. For all of you joining, we are with Dr. Hussein Adia. That is our speaker for today. And we've had him on before. We welcome you to look at our previous Clearwater Baha'i session, and you can see them. For those of you who are meeting Dr. Hussein Adia for the first time, he is born and raised in Neiraz, Iran. He is a sixth-generation Baha'i. His ancestors figure among the first in Neiraz to accept the Babi and later the Baha'i Faith. Hussein immigrated to the United States as a young man of 17. Like many immigrants seeking a better life in America, he worked and attended college in the New York area. Hussein eventually completed a master's degree in European intellectual history and a doctorate in education from the University of Massachusetts. Dr. Adia has had a distinguished career in education in New York, of course. His proudest achievement is to have been one of the founders and assistant headmaster of the Harlem Preparatory School, a world-renowned charter high school for disadvantaged students. The school is credited with helping numerous people to rise from poverty to a better life. Dr. Adia also served as Director of Educational Programs at Fordham University. Now, we can say a lot about him and all of his amazing accomplishments, but I'm going to have to just stick with one about Harlem Preparatory School. You can find out more if you go to www.harlemprepschool.com. And also, as it relates to today, we would like to encourage you to visit www.abdulbahainNewYork.org. For today, www.abdulbahainNewYork.org. And that is all full spelling, Abdul-Baha in New York, without punctuation. So this week's topic, Khalil Gibran and the Prophet. Juliet Thompson, one of the disciples of Abdu'l-Baha, moved to New York City. She made her home in Greenwich Village on West 10th Street near Fifth Avenue. Among Juliet's closest friends was a well-known writer, an artist, and a fellow seeker, Khalil Gibran. Gibran lived across the street from Juliet. He had been born in northern Lebanon, then a part of the Ottoman Turkish Empire. Juliet introduced the Baha'i Faith to Gibran by giving him Baha'u'llah's hidden words in Arabic. This profoundly moved him, and he described them as stupendous literature. Gibran also met Abdu'l-Baha through Juliet. And you can find more about this if you go to our website. We've got the link put up. We got two links, one to the hidden words, of course, but the other to the diary of Juliette Thompson. You can go to https://Baha'i-library.com/Thompson_diary. So it's Thompson_diary. You can find this on clearwaterbaha'is.org. So to avoid saying any more .orgs or .coms, I'd like to get Dr. Adia here on the floor. If you don't mind, Dr. Adia, how can we learn about this amazing connection?
I believe that the meeting of Abdu'l-Baha and Khalil Gibran in 1912 was one of the most significant opportunity that took place in that year. As you all aware, and I talked about this before, Abdu'l-Baha met many people, attended many gatherings, many conferences, gave many talks, but the lasting effect of the meeting between Abdu'l-Baha and Khalil is quite significant. And I think we are beginning, at least I'm beginning to realize how much Abdu'l-Baha had impressed Khalil Gibran and his work. Some of the relation that I found between Abdu'l-Baha and Gibran may not be very solid, or maybe my imagination, but at the same time, there are some indication that Khalil Gibran was quite impressed with the meeting of Abdu'l-Baha, because it reflects on his work. Prophet, perhaps his famous book, Prophet, but then his other book, Jesus, Son of Man, definitely, because he has said so. The reason, we talk about the book Prophet later, but the reason I'm saying that he even influenced him in the writing of the Prophet, because to start with, Khalil started to work on the Prophet in 1912. And it's just by coincidence that why, he was doing so many other work. He was a painter, he was a poet, he was a newspaper reporter. But I have a feeling that the meeting with Abdu'l-Baha gave him this notion of writing that particular book. He called the character in the book Prophet. Oh, by the way, this book Prophet is one of the most famous books that has ever been written. It has been sold by millions and millions of copies throughout the world. Actually, Khalil Gibran is considered the third most famous and celebrated poet in the world, after Shakespeare and after, who is that Chinese poet? Lao Tzu. And so he's the third one. So I remember in my own teenage day, 1960s and 70s and 80s, the book Prophet was the talk of the parties. Everyone was making reference to him, quoted him and all that. I don't see doing it lately, but the influence is there. The original copy of the book was only 2,000 copies, but then year after year, after 1920, I think it came out in 1923. It was double and triple, and even they said by 10, 15 years ago, 9 million copies was sold in America. The story of Prophet, and I wish you all would get that book and read it, is about Al-Mustafa. And you notice Al-Mustafa, how it sounds nicely with Abdu'l-Baha. So he picked up the main character of the book by the name Al-Mustafa. He is on exile, I think for 12 years somewhere. And then he decided to return, or he was allowed to return. He got on the ship and he came back. And then he met people who asked various questions about love, about marriage, about crime and punishment, about loyalty, about happiness, and a whole bunch of wonderful subjects. And he answered them. Now, do you see the similarity a little bit between Al-Mustafa and Abdu'l-Baha? He is in exile in Palestine for many years. He got on the ship, come to America, and most of the thing he did in this country was giving talk and answer questions. Now, again, this could be my imagination, but I see some similarity. But I think the book that he clearly has mentioned that it was influenced Abdu'l-Baha was Jesus, Son of Man, that was published in 1928. And I read someplace, actually, it could be because that book was released. He was attending a session, Khalil was attending, and they showed a movie about Abdu'l-Baha. Probably that's a short movie that Abdu'l-Baha is attending some session in Brooklyn. And he was so touched and he was so moved that he could not take it anymore. So he got up while he was crying wildly. He began to talk about Abdu'l-Baha. And he got so upset and things like this that he had to leave the meeting because he could not stay there anymore. This was 1928, and I think Juliet Thompson or somebody else has mentioned that. Maybe later on, we're going to play an audio clipping of I always thought that this was Khalil Gibran himself talking about Abdu'l-Baha. But then, of course, some of my friends, there are lots of scholars, Baha'i scholars, who corrected me that it doesn't sound like an Arabic person. It could be some of his writing that somebody is reading for the radio interview and for the show. And you would see how he described his meeting with Abdu'l-Baha and his love for Abdu'l-Baha. I think in introduction, John mentioned that Khalil was close friend of Juliet Thompson. Both of them were living in the area in New York called Greenwich Village. I wonder how much you folks know about Greenwich Village. It's quite an interesting place, and it happened by luck. I live in this area also. And it is really have a feeling of a village because it's not a typical New York area that are all horizontal and vertical avenues and streets. It consists of short streets, lots of small shops, New York University, Washington Square Park. So it allows a little bit of closeness between the people who live around here. And historically, the area has been very attractive to politicians, to the scientists, to the artists, to the writer, to the poet. You know, Teddy Roosevelt, former president, has his house there. Mrs. Roosevelt, the wife of Franklin Roosevelt, was living close by. Mark Twain was around. Poe was around. Who else was around? Oh, the famous Russian revolutionary Trotsky, for a while, was not living far from here while he was in New York. Tom Edison was not far from here. There's another character, Tesla was around here. So it's amazing that and Tom Paine, the famous American revolutionary who wrote that book called Common Sense, he has his house there in the village. So historically, this area has attracted all these wonderful people. At the same time, I remember there were times that the hippie in the park.
And you cut out. You remember a time in what?
I remember that in late 60s and 70s, Washington Square Park, which is part of the village, has become a playground for lots of flower children and hippies and drug culture and all that. So Juliet Thompson, at the time, of course, she was a painter, and she was well known actually because she has done some painting for the White House. She was living on 10th Street, as John mentioned, right across her apartment, which still is there. was this wonderful young Lebanese writer and poet and a painter and sculptor was living. His name was Khalil Gibran. He was born in Lebanon to a Christian family, poor Christian family. His father was arrested, put in jail for some unusual reason, which I never knew. And then his mother helped him to come to America and move to Boston as a teenager. Lebanon historically, even these days, has been a battleground between the Christian and Muslims and a whole other group. It never had any peace in that beautiful country. So he was dreaming of a day that there would be some harmony and some better relation between all these groups. And I will mention this later, that when he met Abdu'l-Baha, when he became familiar with Baha'i teaching, he began to discover that the Baha'i faith could be the answer to all his dream and his wanting. According to different historians, even though he was originally born and, as a Maronite Christian, but then toward the end of his life, he was very much attracted to the Baha'i faith. Of course, he never admitted and he never pronounced it or announced it, but we know that how he felt about the Baha'i faith and Baha'i transfer. Unfortunately, I should also mention that like many of folks in that field of work, he was an addict. He drank excessively, he smoked excessively, he drank lots of coffees, and that really destroyed his health. And I think he died in his mid-40s, unfortunately. But within this short period of time that this man lived, he was able to write so many wonderful books, and we can read more about him later. The reason I'm spending all this time talk about him and his relation to Baha'i faith and Abdu'l-Baha is because, as I indicated earlier, I really think the friends should talk more about Khalil Gibran and his work and relation to Baha'i faith. Because the other people that met, Andrew Carnegie met, Admiral Perry met Abdu'l-Baha, there was a casual meeting and they were very impressed and loved Abdu'l-Baha. But the effect and influence that Abdu'l-Baha had on Khalil Gibran, it looked like it was deeper than this just a casual get-together. So I think it was mentioned that for the first time, Khalil became familiar with Baha'i writing by reading the hidden words in Arabic. And I think he mentioned that this was the best of spiritual writing that he could read. And it happened in 1912. Then when Abdu'l-Baha came to New York, he had the opportunity to meet Abdu'l-Baha. And he said, when in Abdu'l-Baha, I see the appearance of Holy Ghost in a human body. I'm paraphrasing what he said. And then he also said that his eyes and his face represent the best of Arabia and Syria and Persia. So he asked Juliet if he could paint the face of Abdu'l-Baha. And Abdu'l-Baha agreed in, I think it was April 19, 1912, that the session was organized in his studio on 10th Street. And they had 3 sessions. And Abdu'l-Baha sat and Khalil painted his face. And they said there were about 20, 25 people present at the time watching this episode. And I do, and many other people believe that really in this picture, Khalil Gibran captured the soul of Abdu'l-Baha. And that I think is, and the copy original is in Haifa and is very popular, and you have seen it. By the way, the work of Khalil Gibran, his painting are selling by millions of dollars in different auction houses around the world. So it's not just his book Prophet and other, which is famous. Also, he was a good sculptor because he worked with Rodin, the famous French sculptor, and so that was his other talent. What else I can say about him? He died young, and his body was moved to Lebanon, and he was buried in his hometown. and according to his will, the profit and the benefit of selling of his book, they were all given to his town. And still, I think it's a non-profit foundation who handled all his financial affairs after he died. We have a series of pictures that I'd like to show, and I will talk more about him. And then I think we open up. I feel more comfortable if the friends ask questions and I can answer, and we can elaborate more on him and Abdu'l-Baha's visit. By the way, this November, is a commemoration of Ascension of Abdu'l-Baha, and there are so many books are written, there are movies are produced, and the New York Baha'i community is organizing a series of visits to the places that Abdu'l-Baha has visited. There's the Church of Ascension close by that we are going there, and in that process, because the house of Juliet Thompson and the house of Khalil Gibran is so close to Church of Ascension, most likely we're going to visit there. We are going to visit Bowery Mission, when Abdu'l-Baha met the homeless of New York in those days. And then we are going to Columbia University, when Abdu'l-Baha talked about science and religion. We will go to Lake Mohonk, which is a famous site for the peace conference. When they asked Abdu'l-Baha, why you come to America? He said, I come here to attend a peace conference. In 1912, there was so much attempt was made to prevent these European armies that were facing each other, Austro-Hungary, Germany, France, England, Russia. They were all ready to destroy each other. And folks like Abdu'l-Baha, Andre Carnegie, and Percy Grant, and Smiley brother from Lake Mohonk, and all that, these were the peace-loving people who were trying so hard to perhaps prevent the coming of the calamity and Holocaust, but they were not successful, unfortunately. And one of the attempts they made was organizing these peace conferences around the world. And one of the most famous one was the one that Abdu'l-Baha attended in the Lake Mohonk and so. And there are a few other things that we're going to do. I'm sure each one of you would participate in some of this activity that deal with the commemoration of Ascension of Abdu'l-Baha. More and more, I have done lots of study about the life of Abdu'l-Baha, and it's no wonder that he is referred to as a mystery of God, because it's hard to believe that one individual can do so much in such a short time. So far, they have found over 18,000 tablets and letters that he has written. These are all in Baha'i Center in Holy Land. These days, the affair of the faith is run by LSAs, NSA, House of Justice, Consular, Authority Board member, and all that. Imagine, even though the Baha'i community was much smaller, but there was only one man with maybe 2-3 secretary assistants who were taking care of all the affair of the faith. And the many talks that he gave, the many people he met, and all that is a significant subject to study for the friend, to get to know the life of Abdu'l-Baha, his services, and his work. No, I think I'm running out of breath. I talk too fast. So I'm going to ask my good friend John and Jeremiah to show some pictures and play that clipping of the Khalil Gibran's word about Abdu'l-Baha, and then we'll open it for question and answer. Thank you.
Yeah, one moment as we pull that up.
Sure.
Jeremiah pulling it up, so just give it a moment here. Thank you for sharing all that. Oh, beautiful. Here we go.
This is absolutely a beautiful painting. It's very popular. I'm sure you have seen it. This is the face of Abdu'l-Baha, the one that Khalil did. As I said, it took 3 sessions to do it. Actually, he mentioned that the night before April 19, 1912, when he was supposed to paint the face of Baha, he could not sleep all night. He was so nervous and so apprehensive that how he's going to do it. And but he did an amazing job, and I think probably it really captured the essence of the Abdu'l-Baha's feeling and the mood and the soul. Next. This is the Juliet Thompson, is another popular photo you have seen. This, I think, is the wife of the one of the president who was, I cannot remember who was the president, but this, she did this painting.
Well, not a president, no.
Wife of a president. And the painting is still in the White House. She was a very accomplished painter, but she studied in Paris. And she, by the way, I didn't know that for a number of years, she served in New York Baha'i Assembly. And also, I didn't know that it was May Maxwell who taught her the Baha'i Faith. This May Maxwell, Hillary and Chapman, myself, we are writing a book for junior youth about the Ruhi Khanum. And the first 2 chapters of the book, hopefully would come out soon, deal with the life of her mother, May Maxwell. And it's amazing the number of people who came to the faith because of May Maxwell and his stay in Paris. You all heard of Thomas Breakwell, Juliet Thompson, who was that very rich woman who lives in California?
Phoebe Hearst?
Phoebe Hearst, and a number of others that they accepted the faith because of May Maxwell. God bless her soul. Next picture. This is the house of Juliet Thompson. This house was available for sale. Can you believe it? In 1960s, I remember a friend of mine who had some experience with real estate mentioned to me casually that the Thompson house is for sale for $250,000. Can you imagine how much this now? Anywhere between $15 to $20 million. Oh, I wish I had that money that time. I would be moved to Florida and have a good time with you folks. Next. This most likely is how the apartment building of Khalil Gibran looked like. As I said, it was right across the Juliet Thompson. It has changed now. They have built most likely a fancy condominium instead, right in that location. But this is how his studio looked like across the street on 10th Street. Next. Oh, this is Khalil Gibran studio. Can you imagine Abdu'l-Baha was sitting here for 3 long sessions. That often his eyes was closed while Khalil was doing the painting. And this is the place that the painting took place. I hope. This is the Khalil Gibran at the older age. You know, he was only 29 years old when he met Abdu'l-Baha, who was 68 at the time. And this, too bad, this is what addiction did to him. There was a woman, by the way, in the life of Khalil Gibran. So there are some rumors that he had married her, but we don't have a definite information. But then Mary Haskell in Boston, who was a rich headmaster of school, and she was really helping him a lot in his work and his promotion of his books. You know, he started with, by the way, he also was a good photographer, I just realized. He began his writing ventures by writing articles for Arabic newspapers in Boston area. And then later on, he continued doing that. Next. Oh, and this is the painting I'm sure you have seen also of the Abdu'l-Baha done by Juliet Thompson. Unfortunately, the original, I was told that was destroyed in a fire, but then thanks God we had some copies, and this is a copy of the original. Next.
I think that's it.
That could be the last one. Yeah. Now we're going to listen to a short audio radio interview related to Khalil and Abdu'l-Baha.
A Lebanese writer by the name of Amin Rehani. He was one of the early advocates for Arab nationalism. There was still no unified Arab state in the Middle East, and resentment was growing over the Ottomans' control of the region. Talking to him reminded me of what life was like growing up in Lebanon and what my country and my family had gone through. After 2 years in Europe, I returned to Boston in 1910 with a different kind of education. I had been meeting with notable people to draw their portraits: the poet W.B. Yeats, the actress Sarah Bernhardt, the psychologist Carl Jung, but there was one person who stood out above all the rest: Abdul-Baha, the leader of the Baha'i Faith. He had spent years in exile, and now in his late 60s, he was touring the West to spread the ideas of his faith. The idea that all humanity is united and all religions have value. Now, these are ideas that I had held since my childhood, but when I expressed them, they seemed like a rebellion against the corrupt and oppressive powers back home in Lebanon. When Abdul-Baha expressed them, they felt like fundamental truths. The night before I met him, I was so excited I couldn't sleep. Abdul-Baha spoke to me about the equality of the two genders and the unity of all prophets. His ideas inspired me for the rest of my days. When I drew his portrait, I said, for the first time, I saw a form noble enough to be a receptacle for the Holy Spirit.
But let's not forget about Mary. Now that Gibran was back in...
No, I have listened to this clip a number of times. Every time I listen to it, I about pump about this Khalil said about the. Okay, friends, I hope you have some questions.
So first question, did Baha'is buy some of Gibran's art in his lifetime?
What did you say?
Did some Baha'is bought Khalil Gibran's art during his lifetime?
Most likely, because actually, it's funny that you asked that question. There was a family in New York at the time that Abdu'l-Baha visited that they were art dealer, very successful art dealer by the name of Morton, and especially Mrs. Morton. I don't remember her first name, and she was very active Baha'i, and Khalil Gibran knew her very well. So it's either this Morton lady, either she bought his artwork, or he or she was agent for selling them and things like this. No, and then you come across some item from a few weeks ago. Tatiana sent me a clipping that there was a short letter that Khalil has written to Juliet Thompson from Boston to New York. That thank you for introducing me to some local Baha'is, and he mentioned that your Baha'i friends are my dear friends also. Love to see all of them. So this short letter was auctioned and I was sold for, I don't know, $10,000 in one of the auction houses. So if you come across something, it could be worth lots of money. Check it out.
Mr. Stephen Collins is asking if we can share this clipping. I will look for it and I will send you an email.
How are you, Steve? Love to send this stuff to you.
I am well. Great to see these things.
I'm so glad you're here. It's an honor to have you among us. I'm so impressed with all the wonderful work and scholarly work that you are doing for the faith. And thank you for being here.
Thank you. It's always good to hear about Gibran and see what new things might pop up. I was wondering if we have any kind of documentation of anything before 1912. When Thompson mentions meeting him, I just wondered if anybody else had crossed paths with him before.
I haven't come across anything, but it's quite possible. I think the Juliet Thompson diary, and then there was an article written by this wonderful Baha'i woman scholar, Marzia Gale.
Yes.
So it may be some reference to that there, but I don't know if there was any earlier mention of Khalil and Baha'i Faith. But I do know that the friendship between Juliet and Khalil and Percy Grant and all these folks who lives in these few blocks was quite long. I was reading actually yesterday that the relation between Percy Grant and Juliet Thompson, and this writer referred to Percy Grant as a hypocrite. And he said in numerous occasions he attacked the faith, even in the church gathering himself. But all of a sudden, when Abdu'l-Baha came and he visited him, he decided, he changed his heart and his mind, and he invited him to be a speaker in the church. So wow. There are some, I'm sure, personal relation between all these folks who were living in this area.
There's always room for finding more. I found some newspaper references to 1919, 1921, 1922, and 1928. I wondered if there was anything earlier yet found.
I'm not aware of. No.
Right.
Thank you, Joe. Thank you, Steve.
Thank you so much for that. We have a question from Dana. Her question is, did Gibran continue his contact with Abdu'l-Baha? So I think we got an answer to that actually from Stephen Collins' question. So there are defined points of contact with the Baha'is and Gibran in 1912, 1919, 1921, 1922, 1928, and of course Gibran died in 1931. So as to other contact with Abdu'l-Baha besides the 1912 visit, are you aware?
I doubt it, and I don't think, and I haven't come across any direct contact between Khalil Gibran and Abdu'l-Baha.
I agree with Dr. Adi.
Unless Steve knows something.
I don't know anything directly with Abdu'l-Baha. The other ones that I know of are where Gibran appeared at a Baha'i event, or where Baha'is and Gibran appeared at some mutual event. But they were all together working on a project. Those are the other dates that I'm talking about, except for the 1928 one is the one where the film of Abdu'l-Baha was shown and Gibran was overcome and left the room crying. But that was in 1928.
That's right. And that was the year actually that I think I mentioned that was the year that his book came out, the Jesus, Son of Man. Steve, can you, I haven't get a chance to read the book or know more about it. What do you know about the book, Jesus, Son of Man? Do you know anything about that?
I know some about it. I have read it. It's a revisioning of what it would have been like to be there when Jesus was walking the land. What it would have been like. It's an attempt at what it would have been like to see this happening, unfolding in front of you from a personal perspective. I'm aware Thompson actually mentions that book particularly being directly influenced, that she was sure that it was directly influenced by Abdu'l-Baha. The idea that the Prophet was influenced is something that a lot of Baha'is have really become excited about. And I think, of course, because the book is famous and the story has many parallels, it's been picked up in a couple of places like BahaiTeachings.org has a couple of articles that talk about it. Sorry, I wasn't on video. That's me, hi. The other points that we have in contact are these mutual events where, for example, Gibran was a consulting artist with one particular church, and the minister of that church was at the 1919 unveiling of the Tablets of the Divine Plan as part of the program, not just an attendee, but actually helping to present the tablets, which was unusual for a Christian minister to be part of the unveiling of the Tablets of the Divine Plan. But then there was also a Baha'i who was a member of his church. At the time, Baha'is could be members of churches. And Abdu'l-Baha specifically had encouraged him. I'm trying to remember his name. I believe it was William Wilhelm. I don't have it right in front of me.
Roy Wilhelm?
Who?
It might be Roy Wilhelm.
Roy Wilhelm. I'm pretty sure who that is, but I can look it up in just a second.
Wow, that's significant.
Yeah, I have clippings about this. The minister's name was William Norman Guthrie. And I've got some clippings about that. And there's an article that somebody wrote up that talks about that church and their goings on and things, and how there was a Baha'i member and Gibran was a member and their activities. Nothing specifically in a cooperation in the church, except that the Baha'is had many services in the church, because at the time when this was going on, Baha'is didn't have their own centers, so they often used the church for events.
That's true. Actually, it's interesting. There is a church not far from present Baha'i Center that I read someplace that Baha'is had the office in that church. They have rented the space. It's one of the oldest church in New York, goes back to the Dutch time, 1623, 1625. And then Horace Holy's office was there for a while, and things like this. This is very okay. Any other question?
So I'm going to just expose this from Reddit that was posted and ask a question off of it. So a person posted in Reddit, if anyone's ever seen the animated movie adaptation, the Baha'i influence on the character Mustafa is kind of hard to miss, at least if you're a Baha'i and watching it. He says it's worth a watch for that alone. He also potentially thinks it's illustrative of a way to portray aspects of our prophets in art without needing to portray the prophets themselves, as through fiction, we can create characters that embody those aspects of the manifestations we admire without needing to resort to direct portrayal. And the question from this, Jeremiah has wisely asked is, would it be wise for the Baha'i community to watch and study the prophet and how he wrote that book, the style as a way of creating material that can be both entertaining really for the listener, but also informative for the purpose of teaching the nature of these holy personages, these prophets?
Somehow I remember there are lots of artwork that has been done based on the book Prophet. I know that there were musical presentation, there were children books was put together, there were artwork, animation things has put together, which I'm not familiar with. But so it's good to consult and see what's available. As long as we don't claim that that really Khalil was, Abdu'l-Baha was main influencer of the book Prophet, because I don't think so, he was necessarily. Khalil was quite a giant in terms of concentrating and figuring out what he's going to put in that book. And then he spent some time, I think, in some beautiful places in Massachusetts by himself and contemplating and putting his notes together. So most likely he had some idea about Abdu'l-Baha's and Baha'i writing, but he was also very much influenced by the Sufism, by teaching of Islam, by the Christian teaching and all that. So as long as Baha'is don't make a claim that there is a direct relation between the Prophet and the Baha'i Faith, I think it's wonderful to do anything that the individual artists can do.
Can I add something?
Sure, go ahead.
Prophet was very prominent in the hands even of the American soldiers. Many copies were distributed to them during the war, and actually that became one of the biggest sell for the Prophet, and have helped a lot of souls in such a critical times when they were losing all kind of aspects of normal life. And I think many people have studied it. I myself have studied it for a short time, and is appreciative to any human being, and you can see the Baha'i ideas behind in every aspect, the friendship, the family, marriage, all aspects that were mentioned as a storytelling, they resonate very much to the Baha'i ideas.
Thank you for that. Thank you very much. So we can draw some connections, some influence, definitely. I want to ask this recording that you played earlier, Dr. Adia, the recording, what was that of? Was that Khalil we were listening to, or was that a dramatization? What was that we were listening to?
Actually, it was interesting. There is a group of scholars, and Steve is one of them, that they have their own interaction, and I put this clipping in the website that they participate, and many of them mention, especially this Arabic-speaking woman, made a reference that the person who's talking does not even have an Arabic accent, and she was sort of competent, knew what she was talking about. So I have a gut feeling that this is in the old days, there were lots of radio shows before advent of television and all that. It's quite possible that based on some conversation that somebody had with Khalil Gibran, or some writing of Khalil Gibran, which I haven't seen this particular writing, that they have put this together, because I'm sure we noticed at the beginning, we talk about the Ottoman Empire and what's happening in Lebanon, and then he moved to his own life. It may have been a part of a longer TV show, or a radio show or radio interview that somebody from Arabia, actually from United Arab Dubai, sent me this clipping that they were playing it on the radio, and then I shared it with the friends. No, it's not the voice of Khalil Gibran, and so that we know for sure.
Interesting. And Steve, he pitched in, he said a radio drama sounds very probable to him.
Yeah.
But it's still interesting to learn all this, and I appreciate it that you're exposing us to all this information, which we probably, statistically probably wouldn't have been exposed to anyway. So I just want to point out for Ms. Thompson, she was a painter for multiple presidents, and that was her. That was a very big contribution to American society that Miss Juliet Thompson had. And being a painter for U.S. presidents, I mean, you have to have some quality of painting to be able to, be chosen for such an honor in our country. And I think that it's worth noting. Now, she was in New York, yet she also went to DC. This person, Juliet Thompson, for those of us who don't know who she is, could you explain a little bit about who she was, Juliet Thompson?
Yeah, sure. Juliet Thompson was one of the favorite disciples of Abdu'l-Baha, and her services was quite significant. And her diary is really explained almost day-to-day activities of Abdu'l-Baha when he was in New York. She has met Abdu'l-Baha previously, I think, on one or two occasions. One time, maybe she went for pilgrimage to Haifa. Other time, I think she met in Europe. Juliet was quite an artist. She herself studied in Paris to become a painter. She was, the story goes that as a child, she was very sick, and almost everybody was giving up on her with a high fever and the flu, whatever she had. And then she had the dream of this holy man, and then later on, when she either met Abdu'l-Baha or when she saw a picture, she realized this was the man that he had dreamed while she was very sick. And Juliet Thompson and Leah Gitzinger play a significant role in the development of New York Baha'i community. I think in one of my talks, I made a reference to, or you could read about it. It was in their presence that Abdu'l-Baha, there was one of the sessions that Juliet was painting him. Suddenly he opened his eyes and he said to Leah, I am the center of covenant, and you are what, Tatiana? What
and you are the herald.
And you are he called Leah Gitzinger, you are the herald of the covenant. This happened in the presence of Juliet Thompson. Juliet Thompson, I'll tell you one more story. Not many people were aware of really what happened to Juliet Thompson toward the end of her life. And a good friend of mine in New York, Bill Donsworth, became very interested in the subject. How did she die? Where is her body was buried? And he did extensive research, funeral houses and this and that. Finally, I think he found some clipping on either New York Times or some other place with the short obituary of Juliet Thompson. And also it mentioned that her funeral is taking place in some fancy funeral house called Campbell. This is a very interesting, very famous funeral house in New York. And then he went there and they look up the directory and find out she died somewhere in early 50s. And she is buried in the north of New York City in the cemetery plot that belonged to Curtis Kelsey's family. That's amazing. Curtis Kelsey, you know, is another quite interesting guy that we should know about. You know, he's the one, his family are quite a distinguished Baha'is serving the faith, and he was invited by Abdu'l-Baha, I'm talking about Curtis Kelsey, to go to Haifa and help to install some electrical lines and lighting and all that in Haifa. So Curtis Kelsey, it seemed that he was also a rich man somehow because he was a top engineer and all that. So they have their own private cemetery in the plot area in the north of New York. So this man, Bill Donsworth, find out that they allow the body of Juliet Thompson to be buried in that area. And so it was very exciting news for for Curtis family and for Baha'i. So we made a big deal about it, national approved, putting a beautiful stone on top of her grave. And so it's one of those heroine of the faith that really toward the end, you know, they become a little bit unknown. This is one point that I often mention with the friends, and I wish they were more conscious of this, that there were so many wonderful Baha'is that they served the faith extensively throughout their life by pioneering, by teaching, by writing, by really sacrificing. But it seems when they get a little older and they become a bit invisible, we forget about them. And we don't pay attention to them. And we don't realize what a potential treasurer they are and how much can we take advantage of their knowledge and their ability and their advice. So another humble suggestion I have, today I'm becoming like a Khalil Gibran, giving lots of advice. So if you come across some of these older Baha'is that they have served the faith so heroically, please take advantage of them and give them company and use them because they love to be used.
Thank you for that wonderful advice. I appreciate it. And I think those of us here also are making use of what you're telling us. Now, there is one question I have, and this is based off of what Steve Collins has brought up. He says, this is in the chat for everyone in Zoom. He says, I had earlier said it was Roy Wilhelm who was a member of the church with Gibran. He misremembered. It was Mountfort Mills. And he provided the citation from the New to Pia magazine. If Steve, you would like to elaborate on this, please do.
Just pointing out that it was a church that where Gibran and a Baha'i were both active, and this was the minister who came to speak to the unveiling of the tablets of the divine plan in 1919. And there were further cooperation. This was, I think, the church Dr. Adier mentioned where the Baha'is almost had an office because they had many of their observances and community meetings in the church. I think it was St. Mark's on the Bowery.
Oh yeah, that's right. That's right.
Thank you so much for this information. Definitely a lot of the stuff we're discussing here, it's not common knowledge, so it's definitely good if you have questions to ask them. We're slated for, let's see, we got a question from Dana. It says, Gibran seems to be a talented and complex person. Could you tell us a little about his family and his connection with being a Maronite Christian, Sufism, and the Baha'i Faith?
The authority on Khalil Gibran's life was a good friend of mine that some of you might have heard his name by name, Sohail Boshuya. Sohail Boshuya was a most wonderful Baha'i scholar. He was also behind the formation of the Peace Chair in Western Maryland. He was authority on the life and the work of Yeats, the famous poet. And then his other talent and contribution was his work on Khalil Gibran. Sohail Boshuya himself was from Lebanon, and he knew Arabic very well, and he has read many of Khalil's original Arabic. So my humble suggestion is, and he has published a wonderful book that it came out by the One Word, which is a publisher in London, England, about Khalil Gibran that Sohail Boshuya has written. This is among many other books that the Baha'is have written about him and could be a good source of information. The other one that I think there is another wonderful young Baha'i scholar by the name of Chris White, who is a professor of theology at the Vassar College and is a graduate of Harvard Theological School. He has written some material on Juliet Thompson and Khalil Gibran that is worthwhile to review. So
Christopher Bach too.
Is that?
Christopher Bach.
Oh, Christopher Bach also has written, Chris Bach has written about him. So these are the sources I suggest that you go to and try to find more about Khalil Gibran.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. And I think everyone here listening to you is as well. So you heard a little bit about how to get some more resources. And you've also heard a little bit of Khalil Gibran's work at the Prophet itself. But for those of us joining here today, what would you say would be, besides reading the book, The Prophet, if you haven't already, what other work would you recommend that people use to investigate this connection?
My humble suggestion is that not just Khalil Gibran, just to expand our horizon and view for next few months leading to November, which is commemoration of Ascension of Abdu'l-Baha. I really think we should all try to learn and more about Abdu'l-Baha, his talks, his writing, his traveling, his speeches. I was reading a couple of his speeches that he gave in Paris. It's so deep and it's so unbelievable that it's really worthwhile to spend time, concentrate at least for the next few months on this aspect. I recall a story that the Guardian, Shoghi Effendi, invited Hand of a Cause Olinga to go to Haifa for a variety of things. And he asked them to stay longer with him. And for a period of almost a month, I think, every day he would spend 2 hours with Olinga and asked him to read and practice the way Abdu'l-Baha delivered a talk. And they said that this Olinga became such a wonderful speaker on later dates that because of that training that Shoghi Effendi organized for him. And so if Shoghi Effendi and Olinga can spend time and read the talks of Abdu'l-Baha and practice it, I humbly suggest that we should do the same. Is a treasurer on each one of these talks. Of course, you would find after a while a sort of tapestry of subject that the Abdu'l-Baha is giving lecture to is about the love, world peace, station of the Prophet, proof of Prophet Muhammad, unity among the friends and others, elimination of prejudice. These are, I mean, we take for granted, and these days we give a lip service. But remember, in 1912, this was a novel ideas that Abdu'l-Baha was spreading. This is my humble suggestion.
And one remark from me in regards of Khalil Gibran. I remember reading about him that his own words were that there was no word coming out of his mouth and be written on paper, which was not gone through meditation. So he was very introvert type of personality and very deep into choosing the words that he will write down. And that's how Prophet become extremely influential, because of the deepness of his thoughts, of the approach to another reality, which he was able to bring down and share with humans.
Thank you for that. Very, very, very important. So as we are in 2021 and it is September, we are getting ready to observe the 100-year anniversary of the Ascension of Abdu'l-Baha, the center of the covenant for Baha'is, also the exemplar for what a Baha'i should act like. This 100-year anniversary in November 28th, what are Baha'is doing around the world for this occasion? What are we doing in observance of this centenary of the passing of Abdu'l-Baha?
To my limited knowledge, there are some big and lots of small activities taking place. For example, as I mentioned, the New York Baha'i community, in remembrance of Abdu'l-Baha's visit to the city, they are organizing a walking tour of a major location that he was. A series of articles has been written and was released by the House of Justice that deal with the different aspects of Abdu'l-Baha's life and all that. And then I was just contacted. They are producing a film that they supposed to signify the contribution and interaction of the Baha'is with the outside world, and what we are doing in the social, in the economic and social development of different countries. And since I was involved in a school called Harlem Prep, which was quite a significant, they asked for more information and more picture to perhaps be included in the film. So a major film is produced for the anniversary, and a whole bunch of other activities. But I think the trust of the Baha'i Faith in the last 10 years or so is to try to get away from these big scale conferences and get together and all that, and allow the local community and to do their own things, to invite their neighbor, invite their mayors, invite their colleague to some gathering and do this kind of thing. So that's what I think we all doing. I'm sure you folks are doing something in Florida. They are doing things in Illinois, in California, and all that. And we are going to hear more and more about them as we go along.
Well, that's very intriguing. And for those of you who are not familiar, there is, of course, the pandemic situation going on, but in the meantime, we have the construction finally of the Shrine of Abdu'l-Baha in modern day Israel. It is near Haifa. And for those of you who are interested in visiting the Shrine of Abdu'l-Baha, it will be hopefully completed very soon this year. And it will be in commemoration of the centenary of Abdu'l-Baha. It's going to be momentous. At the same time, I wonder, with the pandemic and with limitations of travel and all these things, I find it as a form of not cosmic irony, because it's kind of like a interesting motif. Abdu'l-Baha was very naturally humble. He was very self-effacing, to the extent that his birthday is celebrated by Baha'is. For example, the same day we celebrate the start of the Baha'i Faith, the declaration of the Bab, but the same day his birthday is on that same exact day. So rather than celebrating his birthday, we as Baha'is celebrate the declaration of the Bab, which is the forerunner of the Baha'i Faith. So it's intriguing because Abdu'l-Baha didn't want anyone celebrating his birthday. Now we are at the centenary of his ascension, and not to say that we can't observe it as we are planning to in the context of the pandemic, but it's not going to be anything big like what you had with what you could have with his shrine being built. I find it very interesting, something to just step back and think about. In a motif of the grand scheme of things, with the pandemic, it's physically impossible for us to have large crowds in the context of a large, momentous occasion of finally interring his body into his intended resting place. So it's something interesting to think about.
Two things come to my mind, John, when you mentioned this. First, speaking of his birthday and Day of Covenant, you know, it's funny that he died on November 26, 27, that went just 28 actually. And the day on Sunday, there was a celebration in Haifa in 1921. And the Baha'is get together on the shrine of the Baha to celebrate the Day of Covenant. And Abdu'l-Baha was not feeling too good that day, so he did not attend it. And then when his daughters and son-in-law came back, they said that the host, who happened to be a Zoroastrian Baha'i, was not happy that Abdu'l-Baha did not come to the gathering. And he mentioned that actually in the spirit, I was in that meeting very much present, and I knew who else was there. And also, speaking of his ascension, another point I learned when I was doing some research to make a presentation about Abdu'l-Baha's ascension, that this decision to bury him next to the shrine of the Baha was made by the greatest holy leaf. That after he died, the discussion or thinking was where we're going to bury him. Either she planned ahead of time, or she talked to their brother, or she made the decision at the last moment, and they decided next to the shrine of the Baha, there is an area that they can open and they can put his body there. That's what happened. We end up having the Abdu'l-Baha's burial place next to Bab's place. And of course, we know that with the new edifice, it is going to be moved. And then the question was asked, why this? They picked up the House of Justice, this particular location to build the shrine of Abdu'l-Baha. Because I think in one of his talk, or somebody asked him where he really liked to be buried. He said, I'd like to be buried somewhere between Haifa and Akka, so I can have the view, or between the two locations. So that's what exactly they have built up, pick up the location, and that's where the new shrine is going to be.
Interesting, right? So everyone has learned a little bit today about a lot of different things as we are reflecting on this momentous occasion. We are also remembering these experiences that Abdu'l-Baha had with the people who met him, one of which was our subject today, Khalil Gibran, the prophet. And we are at that phase right now. So without much further ado, I think that we are close to closing up, to wrapping up for today. Are there any final remarks you have on the subject, Dr. Adia?
No, I'm grateful for you people to give me opportunity to say a few words.
Well, we appreciate it very much. On behalf of the Baha'is in Clearwater and Tampa Bay, we thank you for having this occasion with us to discuss this subject, and also to remember Abdu'l-Baha as we get close to this 100-year anniversary of his passing. So again, thank you all for joining us here on YouTube, on Facebook, on Zoom. Thank you for joining us. We appreciate it. And most of all, thank you, Dr. Adia. We look forward to having you again to speak on another subject as scintillating as this one. And always, you never fail to bring some amazing information with you. So thank you for that.
Sure. Welcome, my friend.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you so much. What are we having next week, John?
It's a surprise, but we'll be posting that on clearwaterbaha'is.org, unless Jeremiah wants to reveal the surprise. It's going to be put online on clearwaterbaha'is.org. We like to have the traffic on the website. We like to see you come on and also register, and also the link is there, so you can just join on the session at the same time. We have the Zoom link there.
Thank you.
Thank you again. That's wonderful. What a day to spend a Sunday morning. Allah Akbar.